Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm a new compact tractor owner. I've got a John Deere 2025. Owned it for the last year, and I just wanted to share some tips, lessons learned that I have experienced with new users. I think this will help people that are trying to get used to these tractors, and tell you some basic safety information and some things to look out for. So let's get started. I was fortunate enough last year to be able to buy one of these tractors. It's been an amazing machine, and it's a very expensive unit to buy. It's got a lot of capabilities on it, and I think there's a desire to kind of get using all of it as soon as you can. But kind of brings me to my first tip about the tractor. The thing that I learned is try not to do too much. Start simple, start slow. So compact tractor, if you don't know, is somewhere between a garden tractor you might get at Home Depot or Menards and a full-on farm vehicle. It's got all the capabilities of the bigger vehicle, the loader, attachments on the back, mowers, things like that. Can do a lot, but it's just in a compact size. So, when I started with it, I just started simple. I just started mowing. I've mowed before. I've used a riding lawnmower. I know how to do that. At one level, this is just a big lawnmower. It's got a big lawnmower deck on the bottom there. That's something that I was familiar with, comfortable with. Good way to start if you're not familiar with the rest of the capabilities on it. I started mowing, kind of flat areas, not too many hills. Then I advanced into a little bit more hills when I got more comfortable with it. After I was doing that, I started using the loader, in the front here. The loader takes a little bit of practice. I'll do another video on the loader as well, but just picking up mulch, picking up dirt, moving firewood around, things like that. So I got comfortable with the loader, and then I started using things on the back. So I bought a tiller. I'll show you a picture of my tiller. It was from last year. So starting using the rear PTO on it, again, something that I didn't do right away, but took a little time to get used to. And then I got a snow pusher. Show you a picture of the snow pusher, and was using that last winter. So helped me get used to just how the thing works in the front. How do you push snow? How do you work with the loader a little bit? So it helps to start out slow, start out simple, start out with things that you know. One thing I'll say as well as a tip, as part of this tip number one, is I always use the low gear. I'd say 90% of the time it's in low gear. It's just no reason that I can see most of the time to be in high gear. So tip number one, start out slow and simple. All right, tip number two is about tipping, or trying not to tip, or just knowing that these tractors can have a tendency to tip over. I've got it on a bit of a hill here to show you this as an example. But when you think about it, you get these machines, you're going to be using them on irregular surfaces, hills or gullies or ditches. You're going to be in and out of those type of areas with it. That's one of the reasons you buy one of these things. But you do have to be aware that it sits up kind of high. There's a risk that the thing can tip over. Thankfully that hasn't happened to me, but I'm very much aware of it. I'm kind of a safety net when it comes to these sort of things. So just want to make sure that this is something that everybody's aware of, especially new owners. So, what can you do about it? Well, a couple things. First thing is, always put your seatbelt on. I've got this in my other videos too, but put that seatbelt on. You're going to be just locked right into the seat here. If something happens, you're going to get held in the right place. The other thing is you want to always make sure this thing is up. So this is called the ROPS, or the ROPS, abbreviation for rollover protection system. You can see it's up here, it's up pretty high, and it's meant to be that way. You sit here and it's well above my head, so if this thing were to roll over, it's going to be strong enough. I'm in the seat belt here. I'm not going to get crushed by this thing, which is a good safety feature. So I always want to make sure this thing is up. Now sometimes people take it down. You got to take it down if you're going to go, you know, through a garage or something like that. But I'll just show you how this thing comes down. It's got 2 pins here that can get disconnected. They sort of will stay latched on there with this little wire that comes across. I'm going to step up here, and this will flip back over. Okay. And this is in the down position here. So obviously a lot lower. Good to get through and get underneath high kind of clearance items, get you in and out of the garage. But you can see on this that I don't have any protection here when this thing is down. My head is above the top of where this thing is, so it's not going to protect me at all in any kind of a rollover. So you just want to make sure that that unit is up, especially if you're on any kind of hilly situation, getting in and out of a ditch or something like that, where the tractor is going to tend to lean one way or the other significantly. You know, the other thing you can do as a part of this tip, I would say, as well, is to keep the loader down. So when you're having a load in the front here, or even if you don't, make sure this thing is as close to the ground when you're running it and moving it as you can, because that'll help keep the weight down in the front. That'll help keep it more stable. So that's another thing to do to avoid any kind of a tipping issue. So tip number 2 is about tipping. Just be aware of it. It's a risk with these kind of tractors. All right, tip number 3 is to make sure you watch all around. The front, the back, up and down, because the dimensions of this thing are bigger than you think. At least it was for me. It was hard to get used to. That's again a reason why you want to take it slow and sort of learn things as you go. But yeah, I'm sitting in the driver's seat here, and if you look forward, you know, here I am. I'm not that tall, but you can hardly see where the front of that bucket is. I mean, it's out there, but if you're working anything with a bucket, it's very hard to see where it is from this position here. It's just the way the tractor's designed. So you got to be careful. It's got edges on it, you know, turning corners, knocking over flower pots, hitting the sides of garages, things like that. You just got to be aware of where that bucket is in the front, because it can really stick out there and it's difficult to see. And I'd say it's the same thing with any implement that I've had in the front there. It's just very hard to see where the front of the tractor is. You know, so similarly in the back, you know, I've got the weight bracket on here, but you might have an implement or something in the back hanging off the end, and usually the thing is, it's like you're concentrating so much on doing the job at hand, you're forgetting about, you know, looking back here, looking up front. You can get focused on what you're trying to do, and you're not thinking about, well, geez, what am I going to bump into, especially if you're in any kind of tight spaces. So make sure you're looking in the front, looking in the back, and then also, you know, the up is the wraps here. So I showed this in the last tip. This thing's up pretty high, and you know, there's a tendency to take it down, which, you know, is not a good thing to do if you want to have the safety feature in place. But if it's up, you know, you got to be aware of it. So, you know, low tree branches, hanging pots, overhangs of sheds, going in and out of garages, things like that. You got to be very aware of this thing up here, because you're going to be moving along again, concentrating on what you're doing here, and all of a sudden this thing's going to hit something there. So be aware of what's up above you as well, and then also, you know, down below you. I've got the mower deck on here. It sits up not too far off the ground, actually a couple of inches, so you could be banging into rocks or other things on the bottom here. So it's just getting used to the dimensions of the thing. Kind of goes back to my first tip, is when you start slow, you'll realize this, and if you make a mistake, it won't be too serious. But you know, the tip number 3 is just being aware of front, back, up and down when you're using the tractor. All right, my tip number 4 is about ballast, keeping the tractor balanced. So this is something I learned. I didn't even realize this was anything you needed to be concerned about, but it definitely is on these type of tractors. So so ballasting is about keeping it balanced front and back, and particularly when you have something on the loader heavy here, the tractor is going to have a tendency to pivot on this front wheel and tip forward because there's more weight on the front than there is in the back, and this ends up being the tipping point right here. So, you know, John Deere recommends, I think, about 1,000 pounds minimum ballast, something like that. I've never, you know, thought that I needed that much, but you definitely need something to balance out front and back here. There's different ways to do it. You know, you can fill fluid in the tires. That's one way that people do it. There's wheel weights you can put on here. There are weight brackets like the one that I have here. This one is made by Heavy Hitch here, which I think is a good product. These weight brackets include removable weights. So I can pull this thing out. That's a 40-pound weight right there. I can you know, adjust the weight up and down. I have also 70-pound weights that sit on there, and that I really like because it's convenient. I can adjust the weight really easily on it. Another thing you can do is a box, like a ballast box. So sit back here, fill it with sand or rocks or concrete or something like that, and you got to empty it out if you want to adjust the weight on it. That's also something, but you're trying to get weight on the back that offsets the load that's on the front. An implement, if you have an implement on the back, so a box blade or brush hog or some kind of implement, that's also going to weight down the back. It may be, you know, bigger than what you need, but it's going to serve the purpose of balancing out and ballasting out the tractor. So different ways to do it. I've found, you know, I probably use, this is a typical setup here. I've got, you know, 8 of these 40-pound weights. That's 320 pounds. This bracket itself weighs about 60 pounds. So you're getting, you know, roughly around 400 pounds on the back here when you have this loaded up. When I'm in the winter, I use a heavier weight back here. The 70-pound weights you can fill, you know, on the sides here. Also, you know, sometimes you need to put more weight on the front, and this tractor, most of these tractors have a little weight bracket right here, so that weight, another advantage I think of the suitcase weights, is you can just shift them from front to back if you feel like it's going the other way. You know, you got too much weight on the back and you want to put some weight on the front. For example, I use these weights in the front here when I am snow pushing. Helps keep the front end down, better traction for the front. So a lot of different ways to do it. The tip is just to be aware of it, that you need some kind of ballast, especially if you got a significant load there. If there's nothing in the loader, you don't really need to worry about it. If you're just mowing without the loader, it's no problem. But once you start to put something in the front, you got to be aware, I got to have something in the back to offset that. That's my tip number 4 about ballasting, keeping it balanced. All right, my first 4 tips I think would apply to any compact tractor. This last one may be unique to the John Deere 2025. I don't know if anybody has the same problem with a different John Deere model. Maybe you can just put a comment in and let me know. But the tip here is about shifting in the gear. So I'm in the park position now. It's in neutral. I'm going to shift it into low. Sometimes this thing is very, very sticky. And the tip is not to force it. First of all, you don't want to jam it there. That's probably going to do some damage. So what I do typically is just tap either the forward pedal or the reverse pedal to try to loosen it up. Sometimes just kind of let it roll, and then this thing will pop into gear here. But you definitely don't want to force it. It's kind of sticky. Same thing with high, but most of the time I'm using low. And just be aware of that, especially with this model. So that's number 5. All right, so those are my 5 tips. Start out slow and simple. Be aware of tipping. Watch all around you, up, down, front and back. Keep it ballasted, keep it balanced. And if you got the 2025, don't force the gear. These are awesome machines. Really can do a lot for you. Just remember, be safe, have fun, get your work done. Thanks for watching.